today I want to speak about participatory media and its potential for people to advocate their rights and initiate social change. And my particular example is YouTube and how women can use it to advocate their right of breastfeeding in public. I want to start with a story. So last summer, I returned for the third time to a little village in rural Namibia, just in the north, to work and live among the Kavango tribe that lives there. And I was attending a public meeting one day, and I was looking around the circle of people, and I suddenly realized that one woman had started breastfeeding and had partly removed her shirt. And I didn't know where to look, and it made me really uncomfortable. So then, when I returned home, I did some research on the internet on Western views and how other people perceive breastfeeding in public in our society. And sure enough, I found a lot of videos of women complaining about being discriminated against for breastfeeding in public and just encouraging other women to breastfeed. So I arrived at the following thesis, that participatory media can be used to create discourse around issues that are otherwise overlooked by the mainstream media, and that mothers can use it to advocate for their right to breastfeed in public. I'm going to be calling these mothers Vlogging Lactivists. Vlogging is a combination of video and blogging, and lactivists is a combination of lactation and activists, so people that care about breastfeeding. Participatory media are internet-based applications that encourage interaction and exchange of content between producers and consumers. And oftentimes these consumers are also producers at the same time, so we speak of the concept of the prosumer. These participatory media create publics, which are groups that have a common interest, in which people can argue and have discourse, which can then lead to advocacy and action. It is commonly acknowledged that breast is best for children and moms. So for children, the advantage is that breast milk contains all the nutrition that a baby needs, and that the breast milk actually adjusts with the growing child. It also contains all the antibodies that a child needs to be protected from childhood illnesses, and it lowers the rate of obesity and diabetes later on in life. And for mothers, breastfeeding can be a natural way of birth control. It also helps them to return to their pre-pregnancy weight faster, and it lowers the risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer later on in life. Now, the World Health Organization strongly recommends that women breastfeed exclusively and on demand, that is anytime and anywhere, up until the baby is at least 6 months old. But despite this, the exclusive breastfeeding rates in Canada have been declining since 2010. Now, the law also supports breastfeeding women. As we all know, men and women have equal rights in this country. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 28, states that notwithstanding anything in this charter, the rights and freedoms referred to in it are guaranteed equally to male and female persons. This also includes top freedom. In 1996, a woman called Gwen Jacobs was charged with indecency after she removed her top in public on a really hot day, but then she was later acquitted. BC even has specific laws protecting women who want to breastfeed in public. And the Human Rights Code states that nursing mothers have the right to breastfeed their children in a public area, and that it is discriminatory to ask them to cover up or breastfeed somewhere else. Despite the fact that breastfeeding is supported by the law and by doctors, there's still a feeling of lack of public support that many women have, and that might discourage them from breastfeeding in public or breastfeeding at all. And this is actually was found in a study that was done on university-aged young men and women who reside in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. in which only 17% said that they found it always acceptable to breastfeed in public, while 47% said that it's only okay if discreet, and 19% were convinced that it's never okay to breastfeed in public and should always take place in a private space. Now, there's several reasons why you might disapprove or be uncomfortable with breastfeeding in public. One, and in my opinion, the most important reason is that we sexualize the women's body, and especially women's breasts. On the one hand, breasts are seen as an object for male pleasure, and on the other hand, they're a source for nutrition for infants. This combination doesn't really fit together for people that mainly see a sexual image of breasts in public space, for example here, or in the media. So we might view breastfeeding as indecent because a child shouldn't be fed with a sexual object, and so it shouldn't be practiced in public. And furthermore, many women actually internalize this feeling of sexualization, and they think that breastfeeding might make their bodies look only maternal and that they will cease to be sexual. Another reason is that we are barely exposed to breastfeeding. When I was young, this doll was the coolest thing, and I really wanted it because you could feed it with formula and then you would have to change its diaper afterwards. When I was a little bit older, I started playing this life simulation game called The Sims, in which the prepubescent me enjoyed very much making babies, and unfortunately the only thing that these babies could be fed with was bottled. So what I'm trying to say is that as I was growing up, I didn't have any images of breastfeeding in the media and in toys I used, and I also don't have younger siblings, so I never witnessed my mother breastfeeding. And this is actually confirmed as well by the study I mentioned earlier, which found that those women that were exposed to breastfeeding, relatives or friends as they grew up, found it completely natural and normal, while those that were never exposed to it were only a little bit uncomfortable with it. So in my paper, I looked at 3 different vlogging lactivists, and I looked for videos that had women breastfeed in them and that talked about issues related to breastfeeding. And the great thing about YouTube is that it can be used to show both practice and theory. And I also looked at how these videos were received, so I looked at comments and ratings. And I have a short compilation of clips.
There are a lot of moms that are dealing with being harassed for breastfeeding in public. We need to give them support, and we need to give them courage in order to be able to go breastfeed outside without any shame.
Breastfeeding is the most natural thing in the world.
You should be able to breastfeed in public.
You're feeding your baby.
The only thing we're doing is taking care of them and giving them food.
This is what breasts are for. How did I become so breastfeeding in public setting?
Try to find a place that is a tad quiet and secluded. That way your baby is comfortable.
You can use a blanket over you if you want to.
That is definitely not necessary. It's just what you're comfortable with.
All you really need are 2 things. The right bra and the right attitude.
Something to always have is confidence.
If you're at ease with it, other people are going to be at ease with it.
You're going to need to be confident in your routine, your body, and of course the legality of the whole situation.
Breastfeeding is breastfeeding in public, breastfeeding at your home, breastfeeding while you're sleeping. Breastfeeding is the act of feeding your child, and it should be supported no matter where you are.
So as you saw, these women addressed the naturalness of breastfeeding. They educated others about their rights to breastfeed in public, and they gave some tips on how to be more comfortable in public. Overall, these women created great discourse, and there were comments from all kinds of people, men, women, parents, people that don't have children, and all kinds of opinions were represented as well. Those people that disagreed with breastfeeding in public mainly say that they were disgusted by it or showed some sort of sexualization that I talked about earlier. Unfortunately, YouTube isn't only great. For one reason, it does produce some hate. And the other reason is that YouTube's video policies actually have internalized this sexualization as well. Ana Garcia, the woman that you see up there, complained earlier in 2013 that some of her videos were being taken down because she was breastfeeding in them. But she then posted a video of herself dancing in a bikini, which not only was it not taken down, but it also received a lot better ratings. So it shows that it is okay to be sexual, while it is not really okay to be maternal in that way. A way that women bring attention to this issue of breastfeeding in public to the mainstream media is by, first of all, filming situations in which they might be harassed, and then organizing through YouTube such things that are called nurse-ins, which a lot of breastfeeding women will get together at that establishment and, out of protest, breastfeed at the same time. And then the national or international media often covers such events. So what I want you to take away from this is that participatory media are a great way to advocate rights, and breastfeeding in public remains controversial in the online and in the offline world, but it creates awareness and it creates a space for discussion, and that's the best step for normalization, in my opinion. I also want you to take away that discomfort is okay. It's okay to be discomfortable with things, but we should question why we might be uncomfortable and find the underlying social norms and then think about if it's worth following these norms. This, of course, doesn't only go for breastfeeding. Participatory media are great source to be heard in any kind of issue.